Good day to everyone. It's a pleasure to be addressing this forum on Chinese enterprises, investment in Africa, the power of the market and the role of the private sector. Mr. Wamkele Mene, Secretary General of the African Continental Free Trade Area, Mr. Wang Licheng, Chairman of China-Africa Business Council, members of the Diplomatic Corps, colleagues from the United Nations, members from the private sector, civil society, the youth, ladies and gentlemen. I would like at the outset to commend the China-Africa Business Council for publishing and launching the report in partnership with the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO, which is a close partner of the ECA. This report is relevant not only because of China's growing influence in Africa, but also because of the critical role of the private sector in Africa's transformation. The important role of the private sector in economic development cannot be overemphasized, especially at a time when the COVID-19 pandemic threatens Africa's hard-earned growth over the last decade. We see with the COVID-19 that foreign direct investment on the continent has dropped by over 20%. Africa today receives the lowest amount of FDI. We still need more foreign direct investment to create jobs. Africa has lost about 100 million jobs due to the crisis. To relaunch those jobs, a private sector is going to be important. We know that government revenues have dropped substantially by over 25% in many countries, again because of COVID. The government will not be the main source of employment, but the private sector. This is why a conversation on the private sector is important to ensure that we can restore jobs and revive growth on the continent. Chinese investment on the continent remains an important part of Africa's growth prospects. However, with the COVID-19 crisis, we also see that we have to ensure that investments on the continent are investments whose rate of return are higher than the cost of the investment. The continent borrows the most from China. We have to ensure that as we do business with China, China's public sector and China's private sector, we worry about debt sustainability and ensure, again, that projects that are delivered on the continent are projects whose rate of return is sufficient for us to be able to have a return on those investments. Chinese investment on the continent, of course, comes with a conversation around property rights, intellectual property rights in particular. As we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, we need to make sure that the communication and the collaboration between Chinese investment, African technology, and African innovation is done in a way that delivers, as President Xi Jinping would say, win-win efforts for both the continent and for China. As we talk about climate change, we know that there is a lot of work on greening the Belt and Road Initiative, and we want again to thank China and to welcome China's initiative to ensure that we're doing private sector development as well as respecting climate change. It provides an opportunity for both China and Africa to ensure that we can continue to grow green, and grow with better investment. Ladies and gentlemen, to ensure that the Belt and Road Initiative is a mutual benefit to Africa and China, projects of the program must meet with the requirements of China and Africa's fiscal frameworks, but also deliver sustainable development to their populations. One area where China and Africa collaboration has been very strong, of course, is in the energy sector. China has a unique advantage both in solar energy installment, but in also hydropower. We see Chinese investments in the hydropower sector across the continent, which have delivered growth. They have delivered the energy that Africa so needs. We need to continue to work together to see how we can do more in the energy sector as we move forward. We are working with partners such as the African Development Bank. Of course, the first and signature investment between the Chinese private sector, the African private sector, is in Senegal, where we're bringing together Chinese, French government, and the Senegalese government and the private sector to launch infrastructure investments. These kinds of innovative partnerships, I think, are partnerships we need to study more and understand and see how we can, working with UNIDO and UNIDO's support, do more on the continent to ensure that our investments collectively as China, as Africa, and as the rest of the world deliver peace and prosperity to Africa's people. The Chinese market and the African market are two of the largest markets in the world today. we hope that we can use this leverage and collective power to ensure that as the private sector in China does business with Africa, African markets are also open to China. I want to commend the Chinese and the work that we're doing on the ICT sector at the Economic Commission for Africa, which we just did, for example, with Rwanda and Ethiopia, selling Rwandan and Ethiopian coffee to China on e-commerce platforms. We hope the Economic Commission for Africa is working to do this in 10 other countries with the private sector in Africa, working with the private sector in China to see how we can also expose African products to the Chinese market.